Minnesota in the Midwest, there was a lot of bitching, at least around that time. Why can't we be more like Silicon Valley? And usually when that conversation comes up, I just leave the room. Long gone are the days when you can spend $10 to acquire a customer that will pay you $1. The reason why so many funding rounds are down, unless you're an AI startup, is because of that. And it's good. If you're a CEO that claims that you're data-driven and you are not bringing up the data and showing it to your team and at least spending 30 seconds talking about it with your team at least once a month, then you're lying to yourself and you're lying to the world. I'm a 5-time founder. The truth is that it was the loneliest, hardest thing I ever did.
Welcome to Tech Scenes.
Man, it's great to be. I've been watching your interviews for, I don't know how many years, 5, 6, 7 years. So it's awesome to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. Long time coming. Well, actually, it isn't your first round because Enterprise Rising, what year was it?
So Enterprise Rising, the conference that I run, this would have been 2017, where you came to my VIP happy hour the night before and you got your camera out and we filmed some great clips.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a good time. And we're going to do that again this year.
Awesome.
Yes. Well, let's start from the top. For people that don't know, Casey, tell us about Enterprise Rising.
So Enterprise Rising Conference is something I started mainly because I was pissed off. This was back in 2015. And there's certain parts of the country where people in the startup community bitch about the wrong things. In Minnesota, in the Midwest, there was a lot of bitching, at least around that time, around why can't we be more like Silicon Valley? And usually when that conversation comes up, I just leave the room. Because anytime somebody says, why can't blank be more like Silicon Valley? Why can't Atlanta be more like Silicon Valley? Why can't Omaha be more like Silicon Valley? Why can't Baltimore be more like Silicon Valley? It's a losing conversation. It's a worthless, pointless conversation to have. It's void of any value. I did probably the most in-your-face thing I could think of, which is I started a conference to focus on what we are good at in the Midwest. When you take a look at what Minneapolis is good at, what Chicago's good at, what Indianapolis is good at, what Austin is good at, it's across the board enterprise SaaS. Enterprise meaning we build software that we sell to big companies or big organizations.
Right.
And that's what succeeds. That's what gets exits. That's what gets IPOs. That's what we have the talent base for. And so I want to celebrate that and plant a flag in the ground. And so I started Enterprise Rising Conference, 100% SaaS, 100% startups, 100% Midwest. I've been doing it for 10 years now, which is longer than I've done anything in my life for. But I'm very proud of it because it's the highest quality conference, startup conference in the Midwest. And the next one's coming up in a few months.
When is it?
It is. It's April 23rd. It's in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's one very full day of great talks. And I'm not just saying great because it's my conference. Great because every single person up on stage is actually a successful founder. So I have an incredibly, incredibly high bar. When I look at other startup events and they have got like best-selling authors and like athletes and Hollywood stars, I think to myself, like, who in the audience is actually going to get their life changed by listening to some best-selling author or some movie star?
Right.
Like Andre Agassi, I'm sure he's got a great life story, but sorry, there's nothing he's going to say on stage that's going to move the needle for any founder startup.
Right.
And so everybody on stage are successful founders. And more importantly, the thing that makes this event different than any other conference that most people would have ever attended in their life is the speakers get super, super candid on stage.
Mm-hmm.
I've had so many speakers share stories they never shared ever about their startup or their personal life or things falling apart. I've had multiple founders cry on stage, rehashing stories of maybe when they had to shut down the company or when they had to lay off, let's say 21 of 23 employees that they had all in one day. The stories are very raw, very candid. They're not short sound bites. They're me on stage one-on-one pulling incredibly actionable and tactical advice and stories out on stage for everyone in the audience to soak in. The My definition of success has nothing to do with revenue or nothing to do with profit, nothing to do with attendance numbers. It has everything to do with how many founders come up to me afterwards and tell me that the conference changed their life. Usually either because of what they heard on stage or because of the quality and quantity of people that they're able to meet at the event. Look at that view. Just
look at that view. Isn't that beautiful? So where we're sitting is in the Santa Monica Mountains, and we started in Westlake Village, and we're working our way all the way to Malibu. But
so nothing but green. It's almost like there's a valley right here to my right, green hills covered with trees. It's the kind of place you'd expect to see some foxes or goats running around. Maybe not goats, but at least foxes.
It's definitely some probably mountain lions in here.
There we go.
Yep. Some bobcats in here.
This gorgeous house right up on the bluff. It's
deer.
Like 90% glass.
And so we're gonna have a little special caller.
We're having a dial-in caller on the show
that I prepared for you.
I love it.
Good morning, Jeff and Casey. How are you guys doing?
We are doing good.
What's up, Tyler?
We have Tyler Olson on the phone. And Tyler, right now, Casey and I are in the Santa Monica Mountains on a windy trail, which is, I believe, the 23 that goes from Westlake Village all the way to Malibu. Very windy. We just started the journey, and your call is perfectly timed because I'm sure you have a phone call in 3 minutes. And we're going to lose cell phone reception if we drove any further in. So, but you have a question.
Absolutely. Casey, you are so well connected in the tech startup ecosystem.
It appears to me that generative AI may fundamentally impact and forever change the quantity and quality of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship around the world. How do you see AI impacting the tech startup ecosystem? And what new or different needs do you foresee the next wave of entrepreneurs needing?
I'm probably not in the trenches enough to answer the second part of that question, but let me tackle the first from two different angles. Because the word ecosystem might mean different things to different people. So I'll try to tackle every possible angle of the use of the word ecosystem. So number one, AI just in general is going to create more, since it's lowering the barriers, more and more startups will be created. There's an analogy to this, which is like something around 15 years ago, AWS came on the scene. And for those that are under the age of 30, you may not appreciate this, but AWS made spinning up or building software so much cheaper and faster. And so it was a real step change for being able to launch something that's commercial in a shorter amount of time with less engineers and less money, less cash. There's going to be way more products on the market. But what's going to happen is we're already seeing, number one, companies having a high degree of skepticism that the products will actually deliver as promised. So if you talk to an enterprise buyer right now, let's say a CIO of a Fortune 1000, they're pushing back very heavily and just making it very clear, like, listen, you say your product will do X, Y, Z. Great. I've seen the demo. You check a lot of boxes, but we're going to hedge every bet we can here because we have no idea if you're going to be around a year from now or 2 years from now. By flooding the market with more startups, it's good for innovation, net. It also just makes it harder. And founders need to keep in mind, especially if they are B2B or enterprise, that customers are going to get very jaded over the next couple of years because they're going to see a lot of products come and go. They're going to see a lot of products launched and then shut down a year or two later. They're going to get burned far more than they ever have in the past. And so everyone just needs to try to look at things through the eyes of the user and the customer and the buyer and be very okay with the fact that there's going to be a very high degree of skepticism and that will just continue to grow and grow and grow over the next couple of years because there's so many products and because a company may have dabbled or tried a couple different products and paid for these products and they either didn't deliver as promised on the AI side and or the startups themselves just aren't even going to be around in existence 18 months from now. It's a pro in that there's going to be more products launched than ever before. It's a con in that there's more products launched than ever before.
I agree. I think there's going to be a new surge of entrepreneurship around the world. with the power of AI. And I think that there's going to be new and different challenges that every startup entrepreneur foresees. And the ability to have enterprises trust what you're selling is going to be impacted. But yeah, I think we're going to see more products, new products can be coming out every single day.
Well, thanks for that answer. Appreciate it. Hope you're doing well.
And likewise, Ty, we're due to catch up.
We are due. Let's do it sometime.
All right, sounds like a deal.
Tyler, thanks for calling in.
Awesome.
Appreciate it. Let's mosey back to, like, who would you say Enterprise Rising is for?
Most of the founders that attend are between seed and A. So it's helpful if you're B2B and you've got something more an idea, meaning you've actually taken some action, all the way up to if you're a founder and you haven't raised your Series A yet. So once you raise your Series A, you might get a little less value for the conference. I want to be super honest here. Like, attending conferences, quite honestly, is 95% of the time a huge energy time suck for founders.
Right.
So I'm actually very skeptical of conferences, even though I run a conference myself.
Mm-hmm.
Most founders, I think many founders, just go to events as a general excuse not to do any real work, which is a very bad habit to form. Most founders that are, let's say, anywhere from $1 in revenue to $1 million in revenue are going to get a lot out of Enterprise Rising Conference.
Okay.
Also, seed investors or pre-seed investors will easily double or triple their pipeline and their Rolodex of relevant people by attending Enterprise Rising Conference, as long as B2B SaaS is a part of your sweet spot.
Right. What's on the minds of these founders, these CEOs, these investors, and like what's the theme this year?
There's been a reckoning in tech over the last couple of years, since 2022, about unit economics, and it's good. There was many years in a row where unit economics didn't matter. Unit economics meaning is the amount of money we have to spend to acquire a customer actually worth it? Is it actually working? What got lost in a narrative for a lot of years was you need to be growing 3x year on year, hell or high water. It does not matter all that much what your unit economics looks like. For a variety of reasons, starting in 2022 and 2023, there started to be a lot more conversation around this. There started to be more pressure from VCs of saying, we're not going to fund you or continue to fund you if you don't figure out your unit economics, if you do not figure out your CAC, you do not figure out your, and get it to palatable levels, if you don't figure out your payback period and get it down to palatable levels. It's not just about growing 3 or 4x year on year anymore. It's about growing 3 or 4x year on year, but having the numbers kind of sort of make sense. Long gone are the days when you can spend $10 to acquire a customer that will pay you $1. And so the reason why so many funding rounds are down, unless you're an AI startup, is because of that. And it's good. It's a good pressure. It's a good intellectual rigor. It doesn't make you an impressive founder if you're burning through cash like crazy, growing 3 or 4 or 5x year on year, but your economics are just horrific. Like, if an accountant looked at your numbers, they would say you're not going to be in business in a year. And that's not anything to brag about. And it's certainly nothing to brag about raising huge rounds just so you can blow it on customer acquisition in a really sloppy way. Now, no founder thinks they're spending money in a sloppy way. Nobody's going to admit that, but the proof is in the numbers. And so when it comes to companies that suspect or know they're going to raise money, which is sadly, we can talk about this later, but sadly, almost every tech startup thinks they're going to raise money or thinks they need to raise money, which I think is a big error. And we can dive deeper into that later if we want. We can also dive deeper into a lot of VC mythology, meaning myths that VCs perpetuate, which aren't helpful for anyone. If you are planning on raising money, you don't have to have perfect unit economics, but you do have to be aware of what they are, and you have to be thinking about them every step of the way.
Yeah. Metrics are so important. I think metrics are so important. And a lot of, and we're talking right now, kind of early stage, very early stage, from, pre-seed to A, and understanding what those are. is hard. And so what I tell a lot of people is the first step is let's just define some of the metrics that we want to start measuring, right? I think we have to define what those are. If we don't define what those are and put them on the map, we're never going to start measuring them. And then we start measuring them, and then we start to decide if they are the right metrics or the wrong metrics, or how do we want to dial these in or not. But you have, at that stage, again, we're talking early stage, you have to start measuring them right now. And right now is the best time to start measuring them. And then that will start to give you some view into your organization. And as you grow, they'll develop and get stronger, and it will give you view sight to where you want to go and what you need to do and what levers move those needles on those metrics.
And for that to permeate your startup culture, even if you're a teeny tiny startup just getting started, it's incumbent on the CEO to be bringing these things up all the time. It's incumbent on the CEO to pick the 1 or 2 or 3 metrics that he thinks in that moment of time matter.
Right.
And every single time the 2 or 3 co-founders get together to talk or jump on a Zoom call together to check in with each other or to talk about a particular topic, it's incumbent on the CEO to bring up the Google Sheet or bring up the Notion doc right away and be like, okay, here's where we're at.
Peak OS.
Or Peak OS, right? Thanks to Jeff Martin. Their Peak OS numbers, and say, okay, just so you guys know, these are the updated numbers.
Yeah.
This is where we're at.
The number one reason why people don't do it is because they'll tell you, we have no idea what these numbers should be. So they're speculating what these numbers should be, which is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
The point of doing it is to learn and dial in the business. And so where people can, an easy hack to this as a early stage founder, CEO, is to say, hey team, these are the numbers that we think we're going to hit. We don't know if these are right, but we're going to put them out there so we can start tracking them and learning them. As long as you provide context to numbers, it helps everybody get in alignment. And that's the same with my teams that are Series B, C. I've worked with publicly traded companies, ESOPs. I've worked with nonprofits. But when you're talking about metrics, it's so important to have context and share context with the team. If we're saying we're going to hit this, $100 million goal, do we have to hit the 100 million, or is that a moonshot, right? Or is it, we really need to hit at least 75, but 100 would be great. No matter how big organization or how small organization, context for numbers is like super important. But going back to my point, you have to start, you put that stake in the ground, provide context for the team on it, and then you can start moving forward. But I've seen a lot of teams, even Series A, B-ish teams, that just don't have their metrics dialed in because they're afraid to unmotivate the team if they miss them.
If you're a CEO that claims that you're data-driven and you are not bringing up the data and showing it to your team and at least spending 30 seconds talking about with your team at least once a month, then you're lying to yourself and you're lying to the world, because you are not, in fact, data-driven.
What are some of the topics that you think some of the people that you're going to have on stage this year are going to be talking about?
We're going to talk a lot about failure. At the end of the day, part of my secret reason for starting a conference, which is, by the way, something I never in a million years thought I'd do. Nobody says I want to be a conference organizer when they grow up. I just started it because I was looking around and there was nothing like it at the time, believe it or not. SaaStr Annual in the Bay Area started the exact same year as me, Jason Lemkin. And so we've been on very similar paths, although I'm perfectly happy focusing just on the Midwest, whereas he can focus on the rest of the world. The reason I started the conference is because I really wanted a platform to talk about failure more openly. Most people don't hear and talk about failure enough, and more importantly, in the Midwest, nobody talks about failure. It's a very taboo topic, and it's really bad. It's really too bad, and it needs to change. And so if I can play my tiny little role in the universe of bringing founders up on stage and talking about what did not work, about talking about the moments when they thought they were ready to throw in the towel, talking about the moments where the company almost died, usually multiple times, because if you're a founder listening to this, I need you to remember this. And if you're a VC, especially a new VC listening to this, remember that every big success story that's out there came very, very, very close to dying at least once, if not twice or thrice. At least once or twice, every big success story out there was hanging by a thread. And at some point, way back when, in the early days, everyone was shaking their head saying, man, they're just not going to live to fight another day. But they did. They found a way. They pulled through and they turned the corner. But founders in the audience, I think more importantly, just founders in general, just need to hear stories like that because it makes you feel less flawed. For every founder wondering why things aren't working faster or falling into place like you hope they would, it's helpful to know that every founder out there that's now running a $100 million company at one point was exactly where you were and they had the exact same things keeping them up at night that are keeping you up at night. But they work through it. And they're going to talk about how they work through it. They're going to talk about how they pulled through it mentally. They're going to talk about how they pulled through financially. Because when you're a startup, 85% of your stresses are financially related, if not more. A lot of the speakers on stage, not just at this Enterprise Rising conference coming up, but at every startup Enterprise Rising conference I've had in the past, it's about lacing in stories of near failure or objective failure, of when they failed, but they somehow bounced back, or they somehow failed, or they shut down a company and they're back with another startup, right? And here's what they're doing smarter the second time. Here's the lessons that they learned the first time that they're applying to the second time, so they don't make all the same mistakes they made the first time around.
Yeah.
So it's about lacing in every conversation with lots and lots of pulling stories out of failure or near failure out of the founder, so that everyone in the audience can feel less alone in this journey.
Well, there's an interesting metaphor for that in the area that we're actually driving through right now. So back in, about probably 7-8 years ago during the Woolsey fires, when the fires came in the area where we're driving right now, from beyond Thousand Oaks where we started, all the way through this entire area that you're looking at right now, burnt down to the ground. All the way to the ocean, all the way to Mel.
I mean, looking at all this greenery, I would never in a million years guess.
And that's the rebirth, right? Like, it's very similar, like evolution. Oftentimes in startups, at the macro level, like you were talking about, almost near failure in a company being done, even to day-to-day, like things that every company that's doing something new is running a ton of experiments. And they're gathering information and they're bringing it back in. They're learning from it. The cycle, the cadence is super important in all these companies that are doing new things. But there's failures and things get burnt to the ground all the time. But like, even looking at this, like how green it is right now, like there's always a rebirth if you keep going.
That's hard to remember in the moment, though.
And I think that's what's powerful about Enterprise Rising and what you do, is because I think you do a good job of normalizing failure and letting people talk about it, and allowing people to talk about it allows other people not to just, hey, let's go fail, but like understand it's okay and it's actually part of the process. It's actually part of the process. And again, I like to think of like macro and micro and everything in between. But even like my experience over 30 years working with a lot of different types of companies, I've also worked with a ton of venture-backed companies, is, again, everything that we do from day one as a founder is we have assumptions, right? We have a hypothesis. It's the scientific method over and over and over again. And it starts with, I think there might be a product opportunity here. We start building the product. We start to realize what works, what doesn't work. We make some more assumptions. We add on more people that are going off and making assumptions about how to sell it, how to build it, how to support it. We're all making these assumptions, but it is just a process of experiments and learning what works, what doesn't work. And the things that do work is what actually builds the organization. And it's a natural evolution, but the failure, or when we find out what doesn't work, which I think is the same thing, is part of the process. Otherwise, we'd just be starting businesses that everybody knows how to do. Like there's a blueprint to a plumbing business, or there's a blueprint to opening up dental offices, right? There's not a blueprint for the types of companies you interact with, or the companies that your investor friends invest in. There's no blueprint.
People like to lump the tech industry into one industry called tech, but it's actually not true. Because if you're selling to healthcare, that's very different than if you're selling to logistics companies, which is very different than if you're selling to Jeff's plumber that he's talking about here, about Stan. And that's very different than if you're selling software to schools. So
Right.
Tech is actually somewhat of a very sloppy, unhelpful label, because the reason there's no playbook for it, there might be playbook for certain elements like how to raise a seed round, or how to hire a VP of sales. There may be a lot of overlap there,
Yeah.
but there's no master playbook for it.
Right. So you and I have, I think, and this is an assumption, we have a lot in common in one thread. And I think one of the threads for me, and also why I brought on Tyler Olson as a co-founder to Peak OS, is I think we have a passion for helping people do things that are incredibly hard. I can map mine back to why it's founders and entrepreneurs and their leadership teams and their companies, just because I grew up with a very entrepreneurial family, literally on both sides growing up, very entrepreneurial family. And I saw the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations and successes, and just saw how real that was. And so there's something in me, I don't know if it's the DNA or if it's, nature, nurture, but it's just helping those people do things that specifically have never been done before. That is definitely within venture and tech. And I just want to support those people. And I've always been studying entrepreneurship and systems in large companies and medium companies and small companies. That's why, like, over the years, looking back for me, and like you said, sometimes it's hard to see something in the present. But for me specifically, I've been putting together and building Peak for years before it was ever launched, with my first clients, like 15 some years ago, because I was driven to figure out how to make it easier for people. I just didn't like people struggling. I see that with Tyler. That's why I brought him on. But I think that must be true in some aspect for you. And maybe I'm making an assumption, but I want to know, like, I feel like there's a definite pull for you to want to, like, support and help these people going through these very difficult times.
So here's the truth. The truth is that I'm a 5-time founder. Okay. I don't really consider the conference a startup per se. So 6 if you call the conference, but 5, I started 2 startups in college, 3 more after that. And it was the loneliest, hardest thing I ever did. I didn't have any entrepreneurial friends. I didn't have any entrepreneurial mentors. I had great friends, don't get me wrong, but I just had nobody understood what I was going through. Nobody understood why I was doing what I was doing. And like, if I had $1 for every adult that told me I should just, like, go back to school and finish my degree, I would be a millionaire multiple times over. Everyone wanted to try to tell me what I ought to be doing in life in my 20s. All I wanted to do was start businesses. But it was so hard. Like, by Monday, I was on top of the world, had the best idea in the world, and was executing on it. And by Friday, like, I'm ready to jump into a bathtub with a toaster because nothing was going well. And it was so hard. And there was actually a period in my life I actually walked away from entrepreneurship. I was 30, 2 or something like that. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's like, I felt like I was flawed. I felt like that. I swear to God, there was something wrong with, like, my biochemistry, where I was just poorly suited for a life of entrepreneurship. I was poorly suited to handle the roller coaster ride. And by the way, all 5 startups were successful. None of them, I never had any exits because I wasn't sophisticated enough to get any company to exit. Mostly because every company I had, even though I had employees, the minute you took me out, the whole thing fell apart. So everything was way too reliant on me in the middle, sort of like the nucleus of an atom.
Right.
Once you take that out, the whole atom falls apart. I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't skilled enough or mature enough to build something that could outlast me or that could function without me. So I never sold any of my companies, but they were all successful in that they were all wildly profitable with really high margins, and all. The largest one got to just under $1 million in revenue, which was impressive for a 21-year-old. I never took any startup as far as I could have taken it. And when I look back, I wonder, what if I had more entrepreneurial friends? What if I had just one entrepreneurial mentor that could kick me in the ass when I needed an ass kicking and say, Casey, what are you doing? Like, what do you mean you're going to shut down this company? Or what do you mean you're going to move on and start a new one? You got something working here.
Right.
Like, focus on it. And if you don't want to be CEO anymore, great. Then, like, work on finding your own replacement. But, like, there's absolutely no reason to walk away from this thing that's spitting off cash. Loneliness is what throttled my success. it was a very lonely journey, and I made it way lonelier than it needed to be. I was effectively building every company on an island of one all by myself. And that's on me. That's somebody else's fault. That's on me. I should have been resourceful. I should have sought out more founders.
Right.
But I didn't. And I mean, this was before LinkedIn, so it was a little bit harder, but I still could have done it.
Yeah.
So the thing that gets me out of bed every single day now is asking myself, how do I make the journey less lonely for others? How do I make the journey less lonely for those doing the hard work? And in my book, and this is not like a universal truism, there are lots of people doing amazing things in this world. But for me, founders are who I want to focus on. So how do I make the journey less lonely for founders? And that's why I started Enterprise Rising Conference. That's why I pretty much started everything I've been working on over the last decade, all the myriad of other projects and initiatives. It's always, how do I make the journey less lonely for those doing the hard work? And that's what drives me every single day.
It's awesome. That's awesome. I would suspect so much happens in the hallways of Enterprise Rising than it does like on stage. Is that true?
Absolutely. I'd be disappointed if it didn't. I'd be disappointed if it did. And that's actually, I have the event actually happens at a sports stadium for that reason.
Okay.
Because you got the bleachers, like the actual seats. So in this case, my event happens at a baseball stadium. And so anybody that wants it can just escape through the glass doors and go sit out in the bleachers and catch up with somebody or talk shop or get a deal done or whatever. And that's a big reason why I choose the venue that I choose, is because the user experience, it facilitates making it very frictionless for somebody for Jeff Martin to come and see somebody and be like, dude, like, I love what you're working on. We need to find a way to collaborate. Let's go away from the fray. Let's go sit down and go dive deep into this and try to figure out how we can work together.
Right.
So I certainly hope so. Yeah. And many startups have gotten funded from investors that they've met at Enterprise Rising Conference, which is something I'm immensely proud of because it's very hard to pull off. And the reason it's hard to pull off is because in general, most VCs are too lazy to get on planes and go to events. And so the fact that lots of VCs are willing to fly in for Enterprise Rising Conference and attend from outside the area means I'm doing something kind of sort of right. And it means that there's more shots on goal for founders that are attending the conference to actually start more conversations with more investors, so that if and when they're in a funding round, they're starting with a list instead of a list of 6 VCs that they know, they're starting with a list of 16 or 26.
Right. Well, I think it really comes down to, and I all of us have this problem, and I work on this when I'm working with teams. It's like, we need to prioritize, right? We can't do everything. And so what's the most important things that are we going to accomplish, right? And then from that, what do we do to accomplish those things? That's what I do every day with people. And when, as a CEO, a founder, or an investor, they have to be really tight with their time to make sure that they're going to the right things. What you've created at Enterprise Rising, which I think is pretty magical, is there's a lot of value because year over year, people come out, and the people that come out get value from it, they come back. And so they leave it on their list of things that they're going to do. They either meet investors or investors meet founders, and it's worth their time, right? And so they keep coming back, and you keep dialing in the event to make it better and better.
Which should be a high bar. I want the bar to be super high for founders. Like,
right.
In fact, if a founder says I can't come to my conference because I'm like too busy I'm too busy doing X, Y, Z for my startup, I'm like, hell yeah, man. Like, awesome. That's my favorite kind of rejection is, sorry, Casey, can't make the conference this year. I'm too busy getting shit done. Like, hell yeah, that's stuff. The bar should be high. If something's going to pry you away from your team or your customers or your laptop for half a day or a day, like, the bar should be very, very high.
Right. One of my clients is Space Foundation. Like, a lot of people think all I work with is venture-backed companies, but Space Foundation is a huge nonprofit. They put on the largest space conference every single year for many years, called Space Symposium.
So space, like outer space?
Yes, like outer space. They put on Space Symposium. It's the largest space conference. It's basically like the Super Bowl of space conferences.
Love it.
But they do the same thing. They know their audience. They know what's important. They know what's happening from a government standpoint, an enterprise standpoint, and they just put on the best symposium ever around that. And they've been doing it for years. So like similar to you, and they're on a big scale, but they just dialed in every single year, and they're around the right people. They can bring the right people to the event. People keep on coming back, but it's really craft, I think, and art putting together like something like that, and putting something that's face to face, I think is really important today.
If you're listening to this interview and you want to start something that's an event or a meetup or anything, just go deep and narrow, like start deep and narrow. That's the best possible starting point. And you might be afraid that you're not going to get a lot of people interested or a lot of people attending or a lot of people participating, but be okay with that, because if only 30 people participate, but it's like the highlight of their year, then you're the hero. And that's, I think, what you set out. If you're setting out to pull people together all in one place, all at one time, whether it's virtual, in person, I don't care if it's a cabin out in the woods, you're trying to be a hero to these people because you know they ought to be interacting in a certain way, but they just aren't yet. And you want to change that. Cool. Start deep and narrow. Go as deep and narrow as you can, and you will find that will make the biggest difference for everyone. But go deep and narrow.
Yeah.
Part of my contract negotiations with Jeff, my agent insisted that I get to ask Jeff a couple questions about how he does this interview. Do you remember who was your first ever Tech Scenes in the car? Back then you were driving a Prius, now you've upgraded to a Tesla, but back in the day, who was interview number one for you?
But interview number one, and it wasn't in the car, actually.
So
and this is
okay.
a shared acquaintance of ours.
Okay.
Jim Erdem was my first
Oh, wow.
interview.
Yeah, you guys were sitting in chairs in a room, right?
So back then I would actually go do activities with people that what they're into, and Jim is very into yoga.
Yoga, yeah.
And so we met at his yoga studio, and that was the first interview I did. Was with Jim.
So for most of you, probably have no idea who Jeff's talking about. Successful founder, bootstrapped a company, 100%, sold to higher ed, and actually had an exit a couple of years ago. I don't know, did you know that? He sold the company about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. Even if he didn't exit it, it's very successful by any stretch of imagination. Okay, second question. You've got all these cameras in your car.
Right.
How much does it cost to set up? If somebody had to replicate this right now, your setup, how much would they have to drop?
It's so much easier how I do it now. I used to have camera people follow me in cars, following to get the B-roll shots. Depends what we film and how we want to film it. So I have a lot of different variety of ways to do things.
So just what I'm looking at right now.
Probably you could probably do this now for under $1,000.
Okay. GoPro 1, 2, 3. And then what is that? Is that a GoPro?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
You know, the thing with doing video is you have to love it. And there's a lot of, like anything, there's pre-production. If you want to do it right, you have to like plan. You have to figure out how to do things the right way. It's no different than with teams when I get on and we do an annual session or a quarterly session, right? Like we need to pause and think and like think about the past, what's worked, but hasn't worked. Get clear on that and get clarity about where we're going, what we're going to do, who's going to do it, when it's going to get done by. Same thing with this. Most people are like, hey, I'm going to do a podcast. And if they do not love it, they will quit very quickly because there's a lot of details and nuances and, you know, what's the questions or, you know, how am I going to do this or what are the camera angles and who's going to edit it? There's a lot that goes into it, but pre-production is like one of the most important things. If someone wants to start a podcast, or I would say do a limited series, like say I'm going to do 3 or 6.
So hold on. So I'm just going to jump in and be like, if somebody wants to do a podcast, I would actually heavily get you to reconsider and actually just rip off or borrow what Jeff Martin is doing right now. Instead of doing yet another podcast, there's got to be over 500,000 podcasts right now. And I guarantee you, whatever vertical or industry or topic you choose, there's already 5 to 25 out there. So it's not to say that's not a good enough reason not to do it. Still do it, right? You don't have to be a blockbuster hit.
You should know why you're doing it, right? The why is important. And and how you do it is important as well. Yeah.
How long does it take to edit one of these?
Well, that's changed over the years. So depending upon the complexity of the filming and how many cameras that we use, that can drastically change. I used to do the editing because I actually enjoyed doing that.
We're going through a tunnel right now, people. If you're wondering why everything just changed, it's not your computer. So it changed. So how long will what we're doing today? How long will this take to actually?
It will take. So I don't do the editing anymore, and I have a team that does that. So
You're very wise.
I charge the cameras and I clean the cards to make sure that there's space on the cards.
Yeah.
I set up the cameras. I hit record.
Yeah.
When we're done, I turn the cameras off and put them away, and then I download all my content to the cloud, to a folder, and provide context and text information for my editors to put it together. But now they know exactly, we're doing a tech scenes in the car, or we're doing an unplugged, or, I'm going to come to Enterprise Rising, and I'll probably bring a cameraman, and we'll grab some shots and do some interviews, maybe with some of the CEO funders, investors there, and I'll give them context of what we're going to build and how we're going to do it, and they'll go off and do it. In the early stage, though, when I first started doing it, I used a lot of time and energy where I could have been doing other things, but I enjoyed it, liked it, and love video. So, and I love, you haven't asked this question, we're probably going to ask the questions. I really love hearing people's stories and want to share this information and content, because I don't think everything CEO founders and investors do, they have to learn the hard way, right? And I think we can learn a lot from other people and avoid a lot of roadblocks. And that's what I do, and that's what my purpose is, and that's why Collective Genius exists. That's why I built BeacOS. It all kind of goes to the same theme and into the same kind of space of people.
Right up. And if you have listened or watched all the way through, here's a special deal for you. We'll put this down in the comments too. If you want to come to Enterprise Rising Conference in April in St. Paul, Minnesota, there's a discount code that you can use. It'll come up. Just go to buy any kind of ticket or as many tickets as you want. Use the promo code Tech Scenes. It's Tech Scenes plural, right?
Yes.
Okay, Tech Scenes plural with an S at the end for 26% off as many tickets as you want. So it says 2026. By the way, that's a bigger discount than I give out through any other channel or to any other group ever. Go to enterpriserising.co. That's enterpriserising.co, not com. Enterpriserising.co. The bastard that's sitting on enterpriserising.com wants something like $6,000 for it, and there's no way I'm paying it. Enterpriserising.co. Grab as many tickets as you want. Promo code Tech Scenes, courtesy of homeboy Jeff. You'll get 26% off as many or all the tickets that you want.
Awesome. Thanks for doing that.
Of course.
All right. So I have one final question for you.
Let's do it.
And it's the most important question you've ever been asked in your life. And I'm really proud to be able to ask this question. It's more of a scenario, Casey. You are trapped on a desert island. You're going to be there the rest of your life. You have everything that you need. You have food, you have water, you have health care, things that I don't even know that Casey needs, but you have them.
Yes.
But the only thing that you don't have, Casey, is entertainment. There is no entertainment on this island.
Okay.
But luckily for you, a old 80s boombox drifts ashore with unlimited batteries. But you can only bring one album of any genre, any era, even though it's an 80s boombox. One album to listen to the rest of your life. What album were you going to bring?
There's an artist that barely anybody's ever heard of. And the answer, of course, is going to be techno, because that's what any reasonable, rational person would choose. And there's a DJ named DJ Siddick. DJ Siddick. Now, he actually doesn't make music anymore. He was a concert pianist turned DJ. So he's got this genre of techno called melodic, which is exactly what it sounds like. But for most people, the music that means the most to them is somehow anchored to a time in your past. Usually in your teens or your 20s. and it reminds you of a time when you were at your best or your happiest or your fill in the blank, right? That's the music that we never get sick of.
Right.
So if somebody's favorite musician is Bob Dylan, it's probably because there's a period of their life where they got exposed to Bob Dylan either for the first time or a lot of it, and they want to feel what they felt back then. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of things right with it. In fact, that's how you use music as a tool, and that's good because music should be a tool. Music's a mood modifier. It's a very effective mood modifier, and you should use it as such. College was weird for me because I went to school for engineering, but I barely ever went to class. So after freshman year, I created this whole infrastructure where I was paying kids to go to class for me and take notes for me. So I had this whole, what I called a stable of talent or stable people that I would recruit to go to class. So I'd effectively go to class the first 2 classes of every semester, not necessarily because I cared what the professor said, I didn't, but rather I was scouting out who in the audience was actually taking copious notes. Then I would approach them in the hallway afterwards and make the proposal. The proposal was, I'll pay you $500 down, $500 a semester, if all you have to do is show up, take notes, and let me see your notes before there's a major quiz or test. And so I spent all my time not in class and instead, and outsourcing that to students so that I didn't have to go to class unless there was a major quiz or test. And then I would take the quiz or test, and then I just wouldn't show up for like another 6 weeks until there's another test. And I spent all my time working, usually in the library, and building my business, whatever startup I was working at the time. And I would also often listen to DJ Cynic. And so DJ Cynic, if you're out there, no idea, he's not making music anymore. I have no idea what he's doing. And I think he was a college student when he made all of his music, which was appropriate since I was a college student listening to his music. But DJ Cynic, this really, really niche-y indie DJ that made awesome music that was super upbeat, which I needed because I was building startups and I needed to stay upbeat because at any given point, 8 out of 9 things weren't going right. That's what got me through a lot of my early entrepreneurial years with DJ Cynic. And so if I'm on this island, I'm going to be wanting to run all kinds of experiments and try all kinds of things on this island because what else am I going to fill my time with? I'm going to be listening to this boombox with DJ Cynic going because he's going to remind me of a time in my life when I was experimenting and doing big, audacious things, just like I will on your desert island.
I think that's a great answer.
And by the way, Jeff springs these questions, so I had no way to prepare any of this. He just makes up random shit on the fly, which I adore and I love about this experience.
All right. Awesome. All right, man. Thanks for joining me.
Dude, thanks for inviting me. This was fun.
Yeah.